Welcome to the Nord Show, a podcast where we sit with creators and get their thoughts on all things movies, games, and content creation. I'm your host, Joe Aragon. You may know me on TikTok as Cinema Joe, and I'm joined today by SeaPeeKay. We'll be talking about their experience creating content, variety gaming, movies, and at the end, answering some community questions. SeaPeeKay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well, I'm finally getting a chance to talk about one of my favorite movies from this past year. I'm so glad you chose it. So kind of hint towards the middle of the podcast. So I'm very, very excited for today's episode. Before we dive in, though, make sure to follow the show on Spotify, leave a 5-star review on Apple, and of course, subscribe to the NordVPN YouTube channel and use the link in the description to make sure to get a great deal on NordVPN. Okay, before we talk about the movie at hand, I want to know more about you, SeaPeeKay. You're a content creator,
Yes.
You're a streamer. Let's start with easy questions. When did this all start? Or I guess a better question is, why did this all start?
So I see myself as a relatively early adopter. It's been my full-time job for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
I've been doing it as a hobby for 9, which is terrifying to think about now. And it all just started because I've loved gaming my whole life. I've been gaming as long as I can remember. It was always my favorite pastime, my favorite thing to do. And I always sort of fancied myself to be a little bit funny. But when not I want to do stand-up because that terrifies me, but also what if I could find a fun way to mix them? And I had some friends who were uploading some videos to YouTube here and there. And I was like, why don't I give it a try? So I went full throttle. I was working full time and uploading 2 videos a day, which don't recommend. Don't do that.
It's a lot.
Very silly. I have 3,500 videos now or something, and it's just very silly to look back on.
That is insane.
Just fell in love with the whole content creation side of things. It got really lucky. There's always going to be an element of luck. The first month I earned as much from YouTube as I did from my full-time job. I just quit my job.
Wow.
Which again, don't recommend. I got very lucky. I was very silly and it has luckily paid off for me. I definitely don't recommend quitting a stable income for something that is still technically a hobby at the time. And then really went from there. Just absolutely loved the whole idea of content creation. I've got this idea. How can I make the idea? Who can I get to make the idea with me? How can we make it more fun? And that's what I've just been churning out, riding the wave for 7-8 years now.
I have so many questions for you. Really well said. And I love the very sage and wise advice that, there is an element of luck to content creation that sometimes people don't want to admit. It does take a little bit of luck to really make it big sometimes. And yes, for those who want to be aspiring content creators, quitting your job is maybe not the best advice until you're really confident, or maybe you have, a backup plan. But just make sure you're ready. I guess is the point that SeaPeeKay is trying to make, and I'm trying to make.
Very much is.
I have 2 questions. One, I need to know the origin of SeaPeeKay. Where does SeaPeeKay come from? Why the name SeaPeeKay? You're not from the States, but there is a very popular SeaPeeKay in the States. And so when I heard SeaPeeKay, I was like, I don't think that's the same thing. What's the origin there?
Okay, so first of all, I'm glad you've addressed the elephant in the room, and that is the unbelievable amount of crossover memes between myself and California Pizza Kitchen is crazy. To the point where, and I'm not throwing any shade here, but they started browsing my hashtag on Twitter and replying to things,
Really?
which was really cool.
Wow.
And then I asked if I could have my own pizza, and they said, "Hold for that." And I'm not getting my own pizza, am I? But actually, it's funny because I actually had a different name. I made a YouTube channel, and then about 20 minutes later, I came up with SeaPeeKay instead. And I was like, oh, that's a way better name. So I just deleted the whole channel, started again. There was nothing on it, but at the time I was interested in indie games and horror games. Okay. So my original name was Nightmare, but with a K, because the SeaPeeKay is actually my initials.
Okay, there we go.
But spelled out as words. So the first part is Callum, the K part is Night, and then the P is my only piece of anonymity left on the internet, so we don't talk about that part.
Just keep it anonymous, okay.
So, yeah, and then I was like, oh, wait, SeaPeeKay is so much cooler. I had this really silly idea in my head, and it probably has nothing to do with it. But back when I was doing this, I was like, so many popular channels have 3-syllable names.
Oh,
right?
interesting.
There's probably no logic. But like there was like PewDiePie, like Sea Nanos. Like there was channels, and I was like seeing this really completely irrelevant link.
Okay.
That they had 3-syllable names. And I was like, SeaPeeKay. Huh.
Interesting.
And I mean, to be fair, I think it sounds like a cool word too.
I think so. Yeah, I liked it.
So,
I was just so curious because I was like, this has to have a story. And so I'm glad there's a good story behind it. The original 100%. Name is good too. I don't want to knock it. I like the original name as well. It kind of sounds like when I don't know if you were ever into AIM before it was discontinued or you're around. I had a very similar screen name for me. My name was Joe, so my screen name was Jets Over Egypt. There was no reason. I just thought of 3 words, and I was like, I'm just going to put 3 words and do my name. So
that's a clever way to do it.
So I have a similar story, and I can understand where you're coming from. You mentioned you started with you're big on gaming. What were you playing, and what helped you transition to the creation? Were you playing like Halo? Was it Call of Duty? Was it anything else? Was it something else?
Yeah. So actually, a long time ago now, there was a game called Gears of War, very popular Xbox 360 game.
Yeah.
And I played it quite a lot. And then Gears of War 2 came out, and I was playing that, and I was playing it a bunch online. And I played against these people, and like they messaged me afterwards, like the old Xbox messaging system. And it was just like, hey, are you in a team? And I was like, first of all, I don't know what that means. No. And then they recommended I like went to this like website, which was like basically like a forum. And I actually accidentally slipped into the competitive Gears of War scene.
Oh, interesting.
So it was a weird time in the community because Gears of War 2 was out, but no one liked it. So they moved all the events back to Gears of War 1. And I spent like 3 years being a quote unquote pro player. I mean, I was 18, so I'm talking 12 years ago.
Wow.
So pro console gaming wasn't really a thing.
Yeah, not really. Yeah.
No, so like I was going to events, and like, we'd be playing for like, if you won the event, you'd get like $500 split between your 4 teammates, like
it's not bad though.
It was not the big money it is now.
I know, this is very true. A very different competitive scene now. I mean, now it's a college sport, there's professionals. Back then it was very different. I also was really into Gears of War 1. I remember spending countless of nights staying up to 4 a.m. just playing and playing, and I knew every map by heart. Gridlock is still one of my favorite multiplayer maps, basically. It's
a great map.
Ever. So I remember Gears of War, and I remember Gears of War 2 coming out and still wanting to play Gears of War 1. So completely understand that.
And that's actually how it slipped in, is one of the guys that like I was playing with at the time said he was going to start uploading some videos to YouTube. So I just sort of was like, oh, that's where I'll start doing it too. And I was playing anything I could, but I was like limited resources. I was on like a laptop that was essentially from like a supermarket. Like it wasn't a brand name. It was like 9 hours for a render. Like it was awful. I had the worst internet in the country, basically. Like it was an uphill battle from the start. And the one thing I wanted to play was like, I was like, oh, I play all these indie horror games and all these indie games. But Minecraft was like becoming a thing on YouTube. Like a lot of people started uploading Minecraft, and my laptop just could not run it at all. And I was uploading these videos, and like I look back on them now, and it's actually like wild to me that I built an audience when my content was not like content-wise, it wasn't bad in my opinion, but the quality was not good. And I basically built this audience of people who for some reason saw through that and liked me, and they actually crowdfunded a PC for me.
Wow.
This is when I had like 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. Like, so it's like a real niche community at this point. And the day I got the new PC, I started trying to upload some Minecraft videos and met friends who were making those videos as well, and became sort of like a unofficial group. People would expect us to play together. And then one series, in fact, one episode of a series, about 30 episodes in, just blew up, went crazy. And like I said, I've been in the right place at the right time about 6 times so far.
Yeah.
So
wow.
I'm riding the wave.
Interesting. That's such an interesting story. A really good segue to the next question I was going to ask you is, what is your favorite thing about your community? I guess now, besides the fact that they helped crowdfund a PC for you, you've really done a great job building this community. But what is your favorite thing about it?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, again, and it gets harder and harder as your community gets bigger, I suppose. And you see it a lot with some of the bigger content creators, like it's hard for them to control. But right now, my community is like, they're so nice. Like it's such a nice collective of people. It's a very accepting group. There's very little hostility towards anything, basically. And I put that down. I can't curate the whole thing myself. But, we generally quickly get rid of negative attitudes, and I'm very laid back. I'm very like chilled out, and I think my community reflects that. And I think that's like one of the things I'm most proud of, definitely, is the fact that these people like represent me, and I think they do an outstanding job.
Yeah, well said. And I can testify as somebody who looked at your Twitter, because you did post in an episode or a tweet to promote this episode asking if your community had any questions. And sometimes, you can go into someone's Twitter and see the questions and they're a little aggressive or hostile. But I can say for everybody listening and watching, the Twitter questions to SeaPeeKay's tweet were very wholesome, to say the least. I mean, there was questions ranging from, I love what you do, what's the hardest thing about what you do, to what's your favorite kind of bread at Subway? So all very, very kind questions, though, when it comes to your community. So I can verify that is correct.
Thank you. They're a good bunch.
They are. We're going to do a pivot because ultimately, I love your content creation career. This is also a podcast about movies. And I sent you a very short list saying, hey, what do you want to do? I'm open to almost anything. And you responded saying, let's talk about the Batman. This year's the Batman. There's been so many, but the 2022 is the Batman. What's the story there? Why the Batman over everything you could have chosen?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was essentially pick any movie ever and we can talk about it. So it was very difficult. But I like movies. I like to sit and watch a movie. I'm still an avid lover of going to a cinema, which I feel is like becoming a little bit of a dying art, sadly, and I hate that.
It kind of is.
But so the Batman was one that basically I had like a weird like accidental connection to it, in that I lived in the city where they filmed a bunch of the scenes.
Very cool.
So like where I used to go for like a jog in the morning was like where they filmed the scene where he like hangs off the building, and like it was shot in Liverpool, and I lived there at the time, and it was essentially, mid everyone has to stay inside. But when we did go out, I used some of my time to like go and see the set and, see the stunt doubles running across the buildings in the city that I was living in at that time.
Very cool.
And yeah, that's it. And that was essentially my whole choice, was like, I know I definitely have at least cool things to say about the film. Even if I, forget bits of the movie, I know I definitely still have some content to throw in.
That's very fair. It is a 3-hour movie. We're going to forget some things about it. It was I guess you can call it a phenomenon. I mean, Batman's always going to be a really big movie coming out regardless. How did you feel leading up to this movie? There were a lot of speculation. A lot of people were like, oh, I'm not a fan of Robert Pattinson. I'm skeptical, or I am ready for it. Were you going into this low expectations, high expectations? What were your thoughts going on and leading up to this?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people, I think it was like when the whole like RPATS thing was announced, like my first thing straight away was like, I don't know, like I feel like it's kind of like a gravelly character, like it's kind of like a gruff, like sometimes like over masculine, like, and for me, I think historically, and I could be wrong, I don't remember seeing many hints of that from characters that Robert Pattinson has played, previously. Not saying he couldn't do it, I guess that's the beauty of acting. But at the time, I was thinking like, is he right? Can he do it? It's, it's a list of great actors who have donned the suits before. He's obviously going to be compared. There's no way you can't be. You're playing the same character as other people. So I definitely went into it just like open-minded. It's rare I'll see like a review or an opinion and go, well, that's it for me then. No point in me seeing that. Some of my favorite movies have like 6% on Rotten Tomatoes, dude. Like I like some bad movies, and that's fine.
Totally okay. That's totally okay.
Yeah. So I went in pretty open-minded and like, I mean, I liked it.
Okay,
I liked the movie. I think that was the big thing for me, was that it felt like, I do think it felt quite different to previous movies. And I actually think he did play the sort of gravelly character a little, like quite well. Obviously, I think there's quite a few memes about like emo Batman and stuff. Because, you had like the eyeliner running down his face and stuff. But I was like, I don't know. I think that's quite a fun thing to lean into. Like, yeah, he's this big tough guy, but like straight up when he goes home, like my guy's got micellar water on a cotton pad and like, he has to take that off somehow, right? Like,
he does, right? And you have to think of like logistically speaking, I mean, all the Batmans have some type of blackness around their eye. And so at some point they put it on and they take it off. This movie just happened to show you with it, with the mask off. So I think that's a fair thing to praise. So you were convinced ultimately that Robert Pattinson was good? Did you like him as Batman?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's one of those things because now obviously I've read a lot of like things about it because when I come out after I've seen a movie, like I do like to see other people's opinions, just for my own curiosity, if nothing else, I guess. But I think he was good, but I think we saw it as a different side of like Batman. It wasn't necessarily all just like, I'm going to go and punch them and that's it. I think I'm very unfamiliar with comic stories. Let me make that very clear.
Okay.
But one thing I saw when looking into it was that people liked that apparently who's like known as like the greatest detective. And this one sort of felt like there was almost like Sherlock elements of like, oh, he's actually going to the scene, looking for clues, working out, I mean, riddles, granted, a given the, the villain. Yeah. So, maybe the others didn't have the same opportunity, but this really felt like a mix of like action thriller, but with a hint of like an actual like detective movie thrown in, which I liked.
Yeah. That's like almost my review to a T when I posted my review. No, I think you make a lot of great points here because I think many people, including myself, maybe you and a lot of other people out there, forget that yes, he is the Caped Crusader. He can kick a lot of ass and beat up bad guys, but he's also been dubbed the world's greatest detective. And I think I could also be wrong. I'm not an avid comic book reader, but from my knowledge, Batman's first appearance is in Detective Comics. So that gives you a hint to the kind of person he is, and he's supposed to be this great detective. But, we don't really see a ton of detective work in the older Batmans or in the Christian Bale Batmans, and definitely I don't think in the Ben Affleck Batmans. And this is one where actually it kind of feels like a murder mystery in a sense, but set in Gotham. And that's my favorite thing about it is it definitely feels like more mystery oriented rather than beat 'em up, which there is that part too, which is I think great as well.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the supporting cast? We're talking about the Riddler and Catwoman and Penguin. Did you like all of them? Who was your favorite besides Batman?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I think Catwoman's like role in it was like perfect. It was sort of the in and out, like I think it was exactly what it needed to be. The interesting thing for me was that my opinion of the Riddler changed after even after I finished the movie. I didn't like it.
Oh, interesting.
And now I love it.
Oh,
which is interesting.
Yeah, very.
And I think it comes down to there's always going to be an element of this, and maybe it's because my job's in content creation, so I could be skewed. It's never not uncomfortable to like watch people upload a social media clip. Yes. And like, I've seen it happen in a couple of different things. And like, maybe not so much in this one, but like when you hear like they're in a movie and something bad's happened and they're like, oh, like, comment, subscribe. And I'm like, oh, and maybe it's just because I'm like, oh, it's so true. It's so accurate.
There's a little
maybe
bit
it hits home.
You can connect with it a little bit more.
But one thing I did like, and I think a lot of people also like this, is that this Riddler was just some like, he's like a wacky guy, just like dressed up, because I think previously, and again, I could be really wrong, but the Riddler is, it's the guy with all the question marks and the green suit. And he's a bit like, woohoo, look at, I'm doing a riddle.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas this one was like, hey, solve this, or like people dead.
Yeah.
I'm a guy in like essentially a gas mask. I'll do something crazy right now. Don't think I won't. And I think that came across really well in that I don't think I've ever been scared of a Riddler character just from looking at them. But like, if I was thinking to myself, if you bump into this dude like in the street, like, I'm not going to be best pleased about, the guy looks like an army man, just like in a gas mask. It's a great rendition of the character, I feel.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And like you, I like how we're both giving a lot of disclaimers just in case comic book readers come for us on Twitter or social media.
Oh yeah, I just don't, it's not worth it. I apologize. I'm sorry. I don't know your craft and art.
Very fair. I'm not claiming to know everything about comic books either. But to be fair, in iterations of movies, Riddler has always been very, like a little bit more eccentric, loud, green suit, question marks everywhere. This one was definitely a little bit more grounded. Somebody I would never want to see on the street because, they looked like they could snap at any moment, and clearly he does. Thoughts on the Penguin? Did you like the Penguin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is another one of those. I think one of the big things I saw, and I think is the same thing that maybe other people saw the same thing too, is like a lot of the characters felt like almost like revised or like new versions in a way. Whereas like, you're maybe used to seeing X, Y, Z, Joker's the Joker for the most part. Yeah, there's different iterations of him, but you can guess the rough story and how it's going to be played out. Whereas like, I think this time around, even like everyone, like the Batman's almost like a completely different Batman to what we've seen before.
Yeah.
And the same thing, the Riddler, like super different Riddler than like we've seen before. And I think that extends into this as well. It's like, it's a very interesting take on every character that you see, which to me maybe says, because obviously I don't know too much about how long R-Patz is going to do it. 3 movies, 5, 1 and done. I'm sure there's already information out there, but it feels to me like almost the rebirth of the entire universe of Batman. And they're going to say like, here's what you know, but here's how I'm going to make it. And will people like it? I'm sure some won't. But for me, it felt like I could come into this Batman and not have to see all the other Batman movies to like understand this and see the characters. And, I think my lack of comic knowledge, especially, when I go watch movies based around comics, and I've got friends who are comic book fans, and they're, oh, you didn't see this? You didn't see this? It's this comic book friend. And I'm like, no. Whereas like, I didn't feel like this one was as, not true to it, but I felt like this was a much more like, here's kind of a literally 2022 rendition of what I think the characters will be like.
Yes. I think it's a definitely more accessible films for people who are not as well versed in the comic book world. Whether you've read 1 or read 100, it feels like this one was very appealing to everybody. And that's what I also really like about it. It's natural, though, to compare this to the most recent trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy. How do you compare this to that in terms of what do you like more? Are you more of a fan of the Batman? Do you like the Dark Knight more? I mean, that's like the question that everybody's come down to is like, what do you prefer?
Yeah, and I think that's always going to be tough because this is like something like, I think it stems to all films ever. Is like, for the most part, when you see like a sequel to a film, people will always be like, but it wasn't as good as the first one, right? And like, I guess I sort of came to my own realization like a few years back, and I was like, yeah, but it's never going to be, because when the first time you see, one thing I see, and it's completely different to this movie, but The Incredibles and The Incredibles 2, right? Big gap between them. Incredibles 2 came out and everyone was like, wasn't as good as the first one. But now the powers they have, the shock factor of like, whoa, they can do that. Whoa, they can do this. Whoa, that person's this person is gone. It's going to be gone now because you've seen it. So there's only so much a sequel can actually do to appease that kind of stuff.
Very fair.
So it is hard to not see it in a skewed way. And I would say that like probably The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises are the ones that I remember watching, watching and remembering them. And maybe it's because it was, I literally got it up just to make sure, but like, 2008, 2015 time, whatever. That's definitely when I was peak, like going to the movies, watching films.
Yes.
So, and I would say when asked before, I liked Bale as Batman.
Okay.
I thought Bale was a good Batman, but I also I can be swayed on a film by the villain. Like, I love a good villain, and I think Bane's a great villain.
Yeah, I think he is too.
And I would say that Bane would swing a movie in that, like, I thought it was kind of a badass thing, and the scene that always sticks out in my head, and I think, again, I'm going to make sure I get the film. I'm sure it's Dark Knight Rises. I think the back-breaking scene.
Yep, that's that one.
And like, I remember I watched that and it was one of the first times where I was like, oh, it's like wince-worthy.
Yeah.
And, and I think that it is going to be compared against that stuff. And it's very difficult because it's not a sequel. It's like a reimagining of the series that you've seen already. So I think it's tough to compare them. And I think if it was all out action, I would probably lean to Dark Knight Rises era.
Okay.
If it was for all round, which movie did I think I could just sit back and like watch again? Probably the new one. The 3 hours thing is a bit much, for me.
It is a bit much.
And I don't doubt people thought there was a lot of filler. But I mean, you got to do what you got to do to tell a story. And if that's how they thought the story needed to be told, then I'm sure there's a lot of smart professional people who made the decision to make the movie that long.
Yes,
so,
okay.
It is what it is.
That was a very well said and a safe way to please everybody, I think. That's a really good answer.
It's a very safe answer.
It's a good answer, though, because I think you hit all the right points. Yeah, it really depends on what you're in. I think it depends what you're in the mood for, what you prefer. You want a more gritty detective story, you might like the Batman more. If you want more, I guess, more high-octane action, the Dark Knight Rises a little bit more, leans more towards that direction. But I wouldn't say they're one's bad, one's good. They're just different.
No.
They're just different.
Yeah,
so.
it's the same movie idea, but very different movies.
Exactly. Okay. One last question about the Batman before we move on. They have confirmed a sequel. I can tell you that. It's in the works. Batman 2 title pending with Robert Pattinson. Is there a villain of the Batman Rogues Gallery, of all the Batman stuff that you're aware of, that you would like to see make the big screen?
I mean, this is an interesting point because, I guess if it was like, oh, who do I want to see, in the next movie? And it's weird because I said I didn't know if, weirdly, I did know there was a sequel. In my head, I was like, is Arpats doing the sequel? But then, I mean, it would be weird for him to do one and then not do the next one, I suppose. They usually come in like threes or something, right?
They try to, unless it's really, really unsuccessful or really bad. They'll move on. But this one was very successful, so they'll keep him for at least 2 more, probably.
Yes. So interestingly, and this is again, I'm going to show maybe partially my age, but also my lack of knowledge of the films. But my first Batman memory, and it was because I had it on VHS. All right, so
Good
long
times.
time ago, was the Batman with Mr. Freeze.
Yep.
And I just remember, like, in my head now, I do not know how that would be nowadays. Maybe it's not as cool as I thought it was. It was a guy with an ice gun. I'm sure there's more to it than that.
I think it's cooler than you think, though. There's a very, very big crowd of people on the internet who are like, we want Mr. Freeze in the sequel. It's a very like popular trend right now.
Okay, well, I've accidentally stumbled into that then. Because I mean, and that's purely nostalgia only, is that in my head, that's who I remember. One of the first villains I ever remember in a movie is Mr. Freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously, I mean, was it an end of film scene? Was it an after credit scene with the Joker in this Batman?
It was towards the very end. Yeah, they showed the Riddler talking to a cellmate, an unknown cellmate.
Yes.
And then they released, I think about like maybe a month or 2 months after the movie, the director released a deleted scene with the Joker. Like they were interrogating each other, or he goes to the Joker for advice, basically.
Yeah, because I'm interested to, I mean, obviously to say that the Joker is a very easy answer to give to that. But
answer.
In this world of reimaginings, it's interesting because I know it's Barry Keoghan, who is, I could be butchering his last name too, who is taking on this role now. And outside of the fact that I think he's good, I thought he was a glimmer in Eternals, which I wasn't super fond of.
Interesting.
But I thought he was pretty good in Eternals.
I thought so too.
And small affinity because I actually bumped into him at my local Tesco supermarket.
Okay.
And I went in and I was like, I'm pretty sure that was Barry Keoghan. Yeah. I was like, if he's still there when I come out, I'll say hello. And I mean, super nice guy. Chatted to me for a few minutes about movies. And I just like, I think that's nice that, I like when people take the time. So I'm excited to see what he'll bring to the role. Because again, as far as I'm aware, it's very different to stuff he's done previously. And there's always going to be a preconceived idea of what the Joker is and should be, and how much will he lean into it, or how much will they want him to pull away from it. And I think it's going to be like an interesting time to see hopefully some Joker action.
Yeah, and I think, who knows, they haven't released any details about what the second one's about. I am with that popular group. I would be fine with Mr. Freeze showing up. He's a pretty cool villain with a really kind of tragic story from what I understand. Most of my knowledge of Batman really stems from the Arkham games, if I'm being completely honest.
Okay.
I played all of those significantly. So all my knowledge is really just stemming from that, which I think is a good resource, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, I'm never not going to want a Joker in a movie, whether that be Barry or Joaquin Phoenix. So I'm perfectly fine with a Joker in a second movie as well. So
yeah.
Well, we could probably talk about the Batman for the next 30 minutes. We already have basically for the past 30. So we're going to take a quick ad break. And then when we come back, we'll do a quick top 3 and then move to some questions from Twitter. Are you missing out on your favorite show because it's not available in your region? Trying to keep your private time private? Well, let me introduce you to NordVPN. If you're bored of US Netflix, why not take a spin on the UK? Use NordVPN, and at a click of a button, you can do just that. With 5,000 server options, no show is out of your reach, and we all love to binge, but privacy is also a very big deal to Nord. Nord will keep your information private and encrypted, and you never have to worry about your IP or location ever getting out. Make sure to use SeaPeeKay's link in the description of the episode to get a great deal on NordVPN and support SeaPeeKay's channel. All right. I have some good top 3s. We may only have time to get to one of them, maybe both. We'll see. We talked a lot about the Batman, but I am more curious now about your 3 favorite movies that are not superhero related. I'm dying to know now.
This was an interesting one because I have a very wide pool of films that I like.
You're laughing before you even starting, so now I'm even more excited.
Yeah, well, so I'll go with I guess, well, it might not be safe. I don't know if people even like the movies as a general. I have a movie series, but I also have in brackets. So Fast and Furious, Tokyo Drift.
Oh, okay. Whoa. SeaPeeKay, you're tugging at my heartstrings here. That is also probably my favorite Fast and Furious movie, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. So I feel like it's one of those things, and maybe it's like a bit of a nostalgia thing because that was like the Fast and Furious movie as I was like growing up.
Oh, okay.
And obviously, I think some people are at a point where they're really pushing it now with like Fast 9 or something. Like
are they on 9 or 10? I actually haven't
I think
seen
9's
the last
out, right?
So it might be 10. I think it's 10 because I remember seeing like the F10 logo and then just being like, wow, it's a lot of Fast and Furious movies.
And I guess the thing is that there can be an infinite number of movies about cars and driving them fast. Like there really can be an infinite number. So will they stop? Who knows? Yeah. Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.
Awesome.
Maybe a bit more of a classic. I only watch it once a year. Elf.
Oh, Elf.
Got to be thrown in the mix.
Okay.
There's no way I can watch it once a year and not consider it one of my favorite movies. It has to be.
A really good point. I don't think enough people consider holiday movies when making a top 3, top 5, top 10 because I mean, to be honest, if there's one movie I consistently watch a year, it's always holiday movies.
Yep.
I'm always curious because, you're in the UK and Elf is obviously based in the States. Are there, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but are there any like UK specific holiday movies out there that are like very popular? Or is it most of them just like Elf? Or does like people in the UK, do you guys like watch A Christmas Story? Is that a big one over there?
Okay. So, I mean, I think the weird thing here is that like, I feel like, and maybe it's actually similar, but Christmas movies here tend to be like masked as like rom-com movies.
Oh, like Love Actually.
So like, yes, Love Actually is a perfect example. Like it's a Christmas movie, but it's a rom-com. So people see it as a rom-com. And I think there was one more recently, I think it was called like Last Christmas or something.
That was the one with Henry Golding, I believe, and Emilia Clarke might have been in it.
Yeah, right. So, and again, it's a movie at Christmas. It's a Christmas movie, but it's a rom-com kind of? Like, I feel like the UK just kind of throws things together. Mm-hmm. Whereas like, there's like nothing remotely rom-com about some, I mean, I'm thinking like Home Alone's. Home Alone's a great movie, but like, it's just straight up, it's a fun holiday movie.
Got it.
Enjoy it.
It is.
So I would say there probably is, but I don't know them.
Interesting. So I brought up a Christmas Story, which is a extremely popular Christmas movie in the States that it's so popular that there is a TV channel here that will play it 24 hours on Christmas Day. So or Christmas Eve and
Wow.
Christmas Day, it's the only thing that's on. And I ask because it's about a family in like the rural states of Indiana, which is not a very big movie city, but it's such a popular movie in the States. I'm always curious how it is received in other countries, if it's even received in other countries.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I quickly was like, I'm not even, it's not even like ringing a bell for me here. So I just had a quick look and I definitely recognized like the thumbnails of the pictures and the actual like, you know, the like the picture on the front of the DVD and stuff. I'm fairly confident I've never seen it.
That is insane to me. Yeah. That is.
And it's never come up.
Yeah, interesting.
In any Christmas movie conversations I've had here. Maybe it is just like,
you know what, that makes complete
sense
to me. I just find it so fascinating because it's such a testament to like just the cultures of the States versus outside the country, because it's such a staple here. Like if you were to come to the States and I say you poll like 10 people on the street, you go anywhere in the United States, say, hey, what's your favorite Christmas movie? People would say Elf. People would say It's a Wonderful Life. But I would say 8 out of 10, maybe 9 out of 10 would say A Christmas Story.
Interesting.
It's that popular. I would highly recommend it too if you ever get a chance to watch it. It's pretty fun. It's older, but it's like really like cringy, but in a funny way.
Okay, that's sometimes they're the best. I mean, to be fair, maybe it leads into my third choice.
Oh, what is that?
And this is, in my opinion, a cult classic at this point, Shaun of the Dead.
Yes. Now that's also a perfect example of what we're talking about. Now, I love the movie, but I think if you were to poll 10 people on the streets of some random city in the United States, maybe that wouldn't come up as often as like a zombie movie. But let me guess. I mean, if you were to poll 10 people in the UK, what's your favorite zombie movie? I would imagine
this could come up
10 out of 10.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I would guess it would be, you know, because I think what makes it different is, you know, zombie movies to an extent are relatively cut and dry of how, you know, you get from one place to the next place. And Shaun of the Dead really leaned into that, but like made it very ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that because it's just like few British people and like their answer basically is like, go to the pub and just wait and see what happens. You know, like it's just such a funny British ideology of just like, everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. But, you know, no matter how dramatic it gets, it's like, it's all right. We'll be fine.
I don't know this for a fact. I feel like I heard this somewhere on the internet, so I don't have the source. Don't come after me on Twitter or social media, but I swear I've heard at one point that Shaun of the Dead was like the most popular movie in the UK. Like that's the one movie that everybody in the UK loves, and it's like the movie. So
yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
Got it.
If I was going to be honest, like, I mean, there went on to be like I'm sure you know that there was Hot Fuzz and The World's End that kind of followed. I can't remember the name, but it's something ridiculous, like the Cornetto trilogy.
Yeah. That's the one.
And you know, and I feel like maybe they did have the idea for the whole trilogy of movies, or maybe Shaun of the Dead came out. It was so good that they were like, oh, actually, people love this, leaning into silly ideologies or silly ideas that everyone knows. You know, like Hot Fuzz being it's supposed to be like a cop movie, isn't it? But like it's just ridiculously British and leans into the whole parody of like, this shouldn't even happen, but we accept it in action films. Yeah. But it's funny when they point out what's happening.
Yeah, I love all of them, to be honest. Shaun of the Dead is my favorite, but Hot Fuzz is very, very close. It's like, I love Shaun of the Dead, a 10 out of 10, and Hot Fuzz like a 9.8 if I were to make scores. I like At World's End as well, but not as much as the other two. But
no.
Big fan of that whole trilogy. Wow, great top three. I love that. I don't think we have time to get to the other top three, but I just want to know, the other top three was your 3 favorite guilty pleasure movies.
Yeah.
Can you give us one?
Okay, I can give you. Oh, what's the best one out of these 3?
I mean, we might have time for a couple more.
I could list them and not talk as much about them.
All right, go ahead.
If that makes it easier.
I'm curious.
Okay, guilty pleasures. The Holiday. I'm a sucker for the rom-com movies. I can't help myself.
Christmas movie that's a rom-com.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
I didn't even realize I'd done that. Yeah, exactly. Great. Holiday, great movie. Next one, The Cat in the Hat.
Wow. Did not expect that. Okay.
It's it's odd, but watchable.
Okay.
Last one, maybe it's not even a guilty pleasure. Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny.
No, that one's just awesome. That one is just good. I love that movie as well. Good choices all around. And The Holiday, that's perfect for this podcast. I'm in California. You're in the UK.
Exactly. We'll do a swap.
Yeah, it's California, UK. I love The Holiday as well. Good pick. I've seen The Cat in the Hat probably twice in my life. I watched it as a kid. Yep. It was, I don't think I really understood it.
I think that's the thing, is it was so bizarre and so not aimed at the audience of people who would be reading the Cat in the Hat book. It was so obscurely adult for what it was.
Yeah.
That's maybe, it just sticks in my head. Maybe I'm like actually just emotionally scarred from it. I didn't realize.
That's a strong possibility. I want to revisit it though, because you're not the only person who's told me like this movie hits a lot differently as an adult. So I kind of want to revisit it for that reason. But all great picks. Love those choices. Let's move to our last segment before I close out the episode. We did have you ask your fans and followers on Twitter to ask you some questions. We got a lot of good ones. I won't ask you about your favorite Subway bread, but I will ask you some other questions. A good one that's, kind of getting back to what we started this episode on. What's been the most rewarding part about being a content creator?
Ooh, I mean, I would see that probably from two sides of it, in that there's like a more selfish side to it and a side that I definitely think is like more in the public. And I use selfish correctly, but I think people use selfish as a bad word a lot. Turning what was just something I love doing into like my actual full-time career will never not be a mind-blowing scenario to me. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of creators out there who are, very thankful, and I'm the same. I'm probably like overly thankful whenever I get to do something cool. Like sometimes I just sit there, I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, how am I even able to do this? It's just from me being silly and playing games, and but it does lend itself to the other side of this, which I think the best part for me and the most rewarding part is seeing that like people will come to my content when they're having down days, or they'll come to my streams because the community there is like a community that they have an affinity with. And they're like, oh, I'm, feeling a little down today. This has happened. I had a bad day at school. I had, this happen. I failed an exam. And they come and tell me and tell my community, and they're like, oh, I want to sit here for the next 2 hours to cheer myself up. And there's no way to measure the compliment that is to me anyway.
Yeah.
Definitely that. It's to think that I can have any impact on anyone else's life is a really good feeling, but to know that it's happening so broadly online to like people that I've never even met is a very, very rewarding feeling.
Well said. And that is definitely a feeling that really can't be matched. And I think that if you're doing that for people, you're doing something right. So, congrats to you. That's really good. This is a good question kind of to transition to. If streaming wasn't your thing, what do you think you'd be doing? Or what would you want to be doing?
Ooh, that's interesting. So before I was doing this, I had a whole variety of jobs. I was currently working in sales, which as much as I don't like the job or the connotation of being a salesperson, because it's, considered a little slimy, and it definitely has elements of that. I 100% put my sales job down to why I'm charismatic now. In that I was very shy, and I would be, I'd have to talk to a customer and find out what they wanted and like work out how to, sell them a product. And I found that it's much easier to do that if you're, a little more upbeat, a little more yourself. And I think that really helped me in the whole person-facing department. I'm pretty good at avoiding awkward silences and stuff now. Like, I think it really helped me. And would I want to do sales long-term? I had no idea what I wanted to do.
That's fair.
I had no idea. And people ask now, what are you going to do, when the well dries up? And people are like, oh, you can't really just be sitting and playing games anymore. Not a clue. I fancy myself as maybe like a bit of a presenter or something. I mean, it's essentially what I do in my day job now anyway, is, I present myself to an audience for a few hours a day. So I'd love that part. I like meeting people. I love like social interaction. Like I find it very interesting. So yeah, maybe something person facing, interviews, maybe something, in the interview/movie world,
Yeah,
who knows?
that's good. I like those ideas. And you know what? I can also verify, for everybody listening or watching, I didn't go over any of this with SeaPeeKay. This just happens to be a lot of coincidences in our lives. I also started out, 18, 17, working in sales and retail. And I did that all through college for 5 or 6 years. And it helped me a lot just to talk to people, talk to people up front, confrontation. It definitely helped me become more of an outspoken and someone who can present. And I think it's really helped me as well. So if you're looking in content creation, maybe try a retail job just to help break that bubble a little bit.
That's it. Get the confidence out.
Exactly. The last question that I've been dying to ask you. Someone asked, do you think there are more plates or bowls in the world, doors or wheels? I actually have never heard the plates or bowls part. This is the first time I'm reading it.
I haven't. I also like that they thought, double down, get 2 questions in,
right?
Which is clever, very clever. Plates or bowls, it just seems logical to me that plates were made first.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I just figured they made the flat surface first and then went, hold on, we can dip a hole in this.
We can curve it.
Yeah, right? So it's hard to eat cereal off of a plate. I'm sure that's what people were thinking. So yeah, probably plate. And then doors.
In my head, plates and bowls have to be equal. I just feel like it's just equal. How often
it has to be perfectly balanced.
Perfectly balanced as all things should be. I mean, how often are you buying sets where there's 10 plates in one bowl? Usually it's
true. It is always even, I guess.
Right.
So maybe it would come down to literally which was created first, because then statistically there would have to be at least one more, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. I mean, you're not going to have 5 plates in your house in one bowl, right? You're going to have 5 plates in 5 bowls. So
we do have the same amount now. I'm thinking about my cupboard now where they are. I'm like, yeah, there is the same amount.
Around the same amount. The more important question is doors or wheels. Are you team doors or team wheels?
Now, I spent a lot of time even thinking about this, when it was all happening. And I believe I was on the side of doors.
Wow.
I think.
You're a door guy?
Maybe I was. Now I'm trying to remember all my own arguments for this.
I've been talking to a door guy for the last 40 minutes. What's going on?
Well, in my head now, I'm thinking like we just said, cupboards in houses, doors, etc. But then instantly I thought of office chairs. And I was like, and then you'll often see an 18-wheeler truck, but you don't have an 18-door car.
No, you don't.
Maybe I am a wheels guy. Maybe wheels is my argument. I'm going to lock in wheels.
Okay, lock in wheels is a good choice. I am team wheels. I've been team wheels for a while. I got really convinced when someone pointed out, there are wheels on closet doors and there's wheels on cupboards, to pull them out. There's wheels there. So I think there's more wheels. There's an argument for both, but I'm also team wheels.
I did like the argument I saw of, which absolutely doesn't exist because it is fictional, but the thing in Monsters Inc. with all the doors there. So I was like, well, what about this? And I'm like, well, I mean, first of all, it doesn't exist if we're going to be really pedantic about it.
Very fair. Yeah, if it existed, maybe I would change my mind on it. So the only thing that got me somewhat hesitant was someone said, what about a cruise boat? That's a lot of doors. I mean, there are definitely a lot of wheels there as well, but I think there might be more doors.
I mean, it's been happening for about 6 months now, right? Surely there's a scientist who's almost got the answer.
Right?
There has to be one person who went, you know what? This is what I want my life's work to be. I want to work this out.
Oh man. Well, we'll have people comment on our Twitter post what team they are, so we can kind of get a collection of what the consensus is. All right, SeaPeeKay, we can probably be talking for another hour, but we have to come to an end. Again, yes. I want to thank you so much for being on the Nord Show and being here and talking about your content creation and the Batman. I really appreciate it. We'll make sure to link all of your information in the description of the episode. As always, follow the Nord Show on Spotify, on Apple, drop a review and a rating, subscribe to the NordVPN YouTube channel, use that link in the NordVPN description to get a good deal on NordVPN. SeaPeeKay, thank you again for being here. We'll talk again very soon, maybe when the Batman 2 comes out.
True. That's it. No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. And everybody for listening, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next week.